it's midnight sharp and you're watching World News program with me, Miriam Zian. To the headlines. Nearly 100 Palestinians were killed since dawn in brutal massacres carried out by Zionist occupation forces across various areas of the Gaza Strip. An Associated Press investigation confirms that American contractors involved in aid distribution have used live ammunition, while UN voices are calling for an arms embargo and the suspension of trade agreements with the Zionist entity. On the eve of Algeria's 63rd Independence Day celebrations, President Abdelmajid Tebboune, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, presided over a ceremony to confer ranks and award decorations to senior officers and civilian personnel in the army. Army Chief of Staff General Saïd Shingriha praised the loyalty of Algerians and their reverence for the sacrifices of the martyrs. In Western Sahara, Polisario says Morocco failed to legitimize its occupation, while Sahrawi voices are renewing calls to lift the blockade imposed on the occupied territories. Putin tells Trump he will not back down from his goals in Ukraine. The Pentagon qualifies U.S. suspension of weapons shipment to Ukraine as logical, while the EU calls for increased support to Kiev. Hello and welcome to the details of your nightly news. First in our file, 92 Palestinians have been killed and others injured in Israeli occupation airstrikes targeting various areas across the Gaza Strip since dawn today. According to local Palestinian sources, Zionist warplanes carried out a series of air raids targeting civilians in multiple locations in the Strip, resulting in the martyrdom of 92 Palestinians, including 28 people who were waiting for humanitarian aid since early hours of Thursday. And 33 Palestinians were killed and others injured at dawn on Thursday in Israeli bombardment targeting the Netzarim axis south of Gaza City. According to local Palestinian sources, occupation forces shelled civilians waiting for aid in the vicinity of the Netzarim axis, leading to the martyrdom of 33 Palestinians and the injury of dozens. This comes amid intense aerial and ground bombardment across the entire Gaza Strip.
It was a bloody night, as tens of martyrs arrived due to a strike on Mustafa Hafiz school, which is full of displaced people. Also, at the same time, many injured people arrived from those waiting for aid at Netzarim and Nablus aid distribution points. Until now, injuries are coming in, some of which were very dangerous, where many of people lost their lives while waiting for surgery rooms and medical follow-ups.
The Israeli occupation committed a new massacre at dawn on Thursday in western Gaza City, targeting displaced civilians and killing 17 Palestinians. According to local Palestinian sources, Israeli warplanes struck the Mustafa Hafiz school, which was sheltering displaced families in western Gaza City. The airstrike resulted in the martyrdom of 17 Palestinians, including women and infants, and left others injured.
Suddenly we found a tent collapsing over us and a fire burning. We don't know what happened. What else can we say? God is sufficient for me. He's the best disposer of affairs. What can we do? Is it fair that all these children, all burnt? What is going on is unfair. Unfair.
The Al-Qassam Brigade, the military wing of Hamas, announced that they targeted an Israeli armored personnel carrier with a Yasin 105 shell on Wednesday afternoon on Al-Mujamma Street in the city of Khan Yunis, southern Gaza Strip. In a statement, Al-Qassam did that their fighters observed the vehicle catching fire, that Israeli helicopters were seen landing to evacuate the scene. The Al-Quds Brigade, the military wing of the Islamic Jihad movement, announced on Thursday that they targeted an Israeli military vehicle in Khan Yunis, southern Gaza Strip. According to the group, its fighters succeeded in destroying a Merkava tank belonging to the occupation forces in the vicinity of Al-Marsh Street in central Khan Yunis by detonating 2 improvised explosive vehicles or devices re-engineered from remnants of Israeli ordnance. As you followed in our top stories, an investigation by the Associated Press has revealed that American contractors assigned to guard aid distribution points in Gaza used live ammunition and stun grenades against Palestinians scrambling to obtain food. The investigation relied on testimonies and video footage obtained by the U.S. news agency documenting these practices at aid distribution locations. 2 American contractors who requested anonymity reported that they filed formal complaints expressing their concern over the dangerous and irresponsible behavior occurring at these sites inside Gaza. Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in occupied Palestinian territories, called on Thursday for an arms embargo, a servant of trade and financial ties with Israel. Speaking before the UN Human Rights Council, Albanese stated that the situation in occupied Palestinian territories has surpassed the threshold of catastrophe, asserting that Israel is responsible for what she described as one of the most brutal genocides in modern history. The UN official also presented her latest report to the Human Rights Council, in which she listed the names of over 60 companies accused of supporting Israeli settlements and military operations in Gaza.
The situation in the occupied Palestinian territory is apocalyptic. In Gaza, people continue to endure suffering beyond imagination. Israel is responsible for one of the cruelest genocides in modern history. Official figures count over 200,000 killed or injured. Leading health experts estimate that true toll is far higher. As the cost to the Palestinian people grows, Israel has dismantled the last function of the UN in Gaza, humanitarian aid. Its so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is nothing else than a death trap, engineered to kill or force the flight of a starved, bombarded, emaciated population marked for elimination.
And the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights in the occupied Palestinian territories, Francesca Albanese, has released a report implicating major corporations and entities in supporting Israeli settlements and aggression on Gaza based on over 200 submissions from governments, rights groups, and experts. Hossam Barkan has more details.
Genocide merchants are profiting from the death in Gaza, increasing their wealth and stock market shares by billions of dollars. Profits written in the blood of the innocent and illustrated in canvases of shared bodies consumed by the Zionist arsenal. UN Special Rapporteur Francesca Albanese identified more than 60 global giants, including well-known arms and technology companies, that support Zionist genocidal operations in Gaza and contribute to their criminal economies to the construction of settlement in the West Bank.
If the genocide has not stopped, it's not just because there has always been an economy of the occupation. It's because the economy of the occupation has turned into an economy of genocide. And so there have been people and organizations that have profited from the violence, the killing, the maiming, the destruction in Gaza and in other parts of the occupied Palestinian territory, because it's not that the Palestinians in the West Bank and East Jerusalem are having the happiest time of their life as we speak.
Tech giants like Google's parent company, Amazon, Microsoft, IBM, and others provide surveillance tools and services that enable access to data, people, and apps anytime and anywhere. Technology placed at the disposal of military arsenal targeting Palestinians. Meanwhile, arms manufacturers such as Lockheed, Martin, Leonardo, Caterpillar, and HD Hyundai continue supplying Israel with advanced weapons and surveillance equipment, fueling the destruction of Gaza and grave violations against the defenseless people.
The 40 entities named in my report, alongside their parent subsidiary licensees and franchisees, are just the tip of the iceberg, illustrative of this system that entangles many, many more. What I exposed is not a list, it is a system, and it is to be addressed. Now, my expectation is that the OHCHR database, the Working Group on Business and Human Rights, and lawyers, investigative journalists, and prosecutors globally will take this framework and secure that what states have failed to achieve, accountability. And we must reverse the tide.
At a time when life is being wiped out in Gaza and the West Bank is facing increasing violations, Albany's report exposes the true reason behind the continuation of the Zionist genocide. It has become a highly profitable venture for criminal entities that have lost their humanity and are now financially entangled in the apartheid and militarization system employed by the Zionist occupation.
Algerian President Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces and Minister of National Defense, presided Thursday over an annual ceremony for the conferral of military ranks and the awarding of medals at the People's Palace in the capital, Algiers. The ceremony held on the eve of the 63rd anniversary of Independence Day, so President Abdelmajid Tebboune promotes several brigadiers to the rank of Major General and a number of colonels to the rank of Brigadier General in the Algerian Army. President Abdelmajid Tebboune also conferred the rank of Lieutenant General on Mustafa Ismaili, Commander of Land Forces. President Abdelmajid Tebboune has also awarded the Order of National Merit rank of Ashir to Ali Badawi, Director General of National Security, and Murad Ajal, Chairman of CEO of Sonal Gas Group. And also on the same occasion, President Tebboune awarded medals to a number of senior officers and civilian personnel. The Minister Delegate to the Algerian Minister of Defense and Chief of Staff of the National People's Army, General Said Shingriha, expressed his appreciation to President Tebboune for personally supervising the ceremony of conferring ranks and awarding medals to officers of the National People's Army.
On this happy occasion, I am honored to express to you, Mr. President of the Republic, Supreme Commander of the Armed Forces, Minister of National Defense, on my own behalf and on behalf of all members of the National People's Army, my deep thanks and gratitude for supervising the ceremony of awarding ranks and medals to a number of executives of the National People's Army. This honor, which has become a good and deeply rooted tradition, truly bears witness to the extent of the care you give to the executives and employees of our great army, and will undoubtedly motivate them to more serious work, perseverance, and contribution to the construction of our armed forces on a solid foundation.
The Chief of Staff of the Algerian Army stressed that holding this ceremony in conjunction with Independence Day reflects the deep gratitude of the loyal sons of Algeria for the sacrifices of the nation's righteous martyrs who sacrificed their lives for the homeland.
Organizing this joyful celebration amidst the celebrations marking the 63rd anniversary of Independence Day and the recovery of national sovereignty instills in our souls the deepest feelings of pride and honor in the glories and achievements of our blessed ancestors, and revives in our hearts the highest meanings of victory, freedom, and absolute loyalty to sovereign Algeria.
Army General Said Shinkriha also congratulated the officers who were promoted and those who received medals, urging them to be worthy leaders capable of guiding their men from one victory to another. And Algeria has reaffirmed its commitment to supporting peace and stability in Somalia. According to a statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Minister Delegate for African Affairs Salma Bakhta Mansouri reiterated this stance during her virtual participation the African Union Peace and Security Council's ministerial meeting on Thursday, which focused on the situation in Somalia and the AU support mission. Mansouri highlighted Algeria's continued support for Somalia's counter-terrorism and stabilization efforts in coordination with regional and international partners to help establish lasting peace across Somalia and the wider Horn of Africa. The meeting was attended by foreign ministers from several member states, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, the AU Commissioner for Political Affairs, Peace and Security, the Somali foreign minister, as well as representatives from IGAD and the United Nations and the European Union. The Polisario Front said Morocco has been unable to legitimize its occupation of Western Sahara, stressing that decades of force have failed, and so will attempts to buy legitimacy. Sidi Mohamed Ammar, member of the Polisario National Secretariat and the Front's representative of the UN, stated that thanks to the resistance, determination, and resilience of the Sahrawi people over nearly 5 decades, the Moroccan occupying state has failed to gain international legitimacy for its occupation of Western Sahara or to impose a fait accompli. He added that Morocco is now resorting to relying on deals and positions driven by transactional politics adopted by some governments. The Sahrawi Association of Victims of Grave Human Rights Violations urged the United Nations to urgently lift the blockade on the region and take responsibility for the worsening situation in the occupied Sahrawi territories. In a statement, the association warned of the rise in violations by the Moroccan occupation against human rights activists since 2022 and called on international organizations to condemn the forced closure of its headquarters for 3 years, aimed at silencing its voice and preventing it from documenting abuses.
Between 2022 and 2025, there has been a serious escalation in the scale and intensity of violations, including the suppression of peaceful protests, the siege of activist homes, physical and psychological assaults, and unfair trials, all amid continued international neglect of the association's appeals and those of the Sahrawi civil society. We call on the Secretary General of the United Nations and the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights to assume their responsibilities regarding the grave situation in the occupied Sahrawi territories and to take urgent action to lift the unjust blockade imposed on the region.
Various Moroccan, Palestinian, and international organizations have called for a boycott of the 5th Sociology Forum set to take place at Rabat University from July 6th to 11 because of the participation of Israeli universities linked to the ongoing genocide in Gaza. They view Morocco's hosting of the forum as an attempt to whitewash the image of the Israeli occupation.
We renew our call to continue boycotting the Fifth Sociology Forum as long as the International Sociological Association fails to uphold the ethical standards required to ensure no harm is inflicted upon the Palestinian cause. We emphasize the need for solidarity to end the ongoing genocide and dismantle the Zionist settler colonial apartheid regime.
Russian President Vladimir Putin spoke by phone with US President Donald Trump on Thursday evening to discuss international issues including the Middle East and the war in Ukraine. According to the Kremlin, Putin said Russia would not retreat from its objectives in Ukraine, particularly in addressing what he called the root causes of the conflict, now in its fourth year. He also expressed Moscow's openness to negotiations. Trump, for his part, voiced his desire to end the war swiftly, according to Kremlin aide Yuri Yushakov. Pentagon spokesperson Sean Parnell stated that Washington's suspension of certain types of weapons shipment to Kiev as part of an assessment of U.S. military stockpiles is a sound and practical decision. Speaking to the press, Parnell explained that the halt aims to establish a structure for evaluating the type and destination of ammunition sent to Ukraine. He declined to give details about the specific weapons affected, and then that President Donald Trump and Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin will ultimately decide how to proceed with the weapon systems intended to support Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Thursday that growing doubts over the U.S. stance toward Europe highlight the need to strengthen cooperation through the European Union and NATO. Speaking on the sidelines of his meetings with Danish and EU leaders in Aarhus, Denmark, Zelensky emphasized the importance of enhancing inter-European cooperation via the EU and NATO, as well as boosting direct bilateral relations. In the same context, the European Union called for bolstering European support for Ukraine following the U.S. decision to halt the delivery of certain weapons to Kiev. Dutch Prime Minister Dick Schoof announced a new European military package that contains 100 drone radar systems, unmanned vehicles, and 80 million euros for drone development ahead of a summit of NATO member nations.
That I can announce that we have a new package, a package that contains 100 drone radar systems, which are very important, unmanned vehicles that can be used at the front line to bring back wounded soldiers. And also we have the drone initiative that we put about 80 million into developing drones in the Drone Alliance. But also we agreed, or going to agree, that we're going to produce drones in the Netherlands for Ukraine on your specifications. I think that are important developments.
Danish Prime Minister Mette Frederiksen warned that the U.S. failure to provide the military support Kiev needs would represent a serious setback for Kiev, the European Union and NATO. Speaking at a joint press conference in Copenhagen with European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, Frederiksen stated that the war in Ukraine is not just Ukraine's war, but a war about the future of Europe.
The negotiations with the United States are ongoing. Of course, if U.S. decides not to provide Ukraine with what is needed, it would be a serious setback for Ukraine and for Europe and for NATO. Because as I guess both of us have said already, the war in Ukraine has never only been about Ukraine. This is a war about the future of Europe.
The U.S. Department of Defense said that airstrikes carried out by Washington 10 days ago set Iran's nuclear program back by as much as 2 years. During a press briefing, Pentagon spokesman Sean Parnell stated that the assessment is based on intelligence reports within the Defense Department, adding that all available intelligence points to the Iranian facilities having been completely destroyed.
You know, our assessment of the battle damage around Fordow, Nantes, and Isfahan remains unchanged. I mean, we believe, and certainly all of the intelligence that we've seen have led us to believe that those facilities especially have been completely obliterated. And the interesting kind of side point about this, Tara, is that all of the conversations that we've had since Operation Midnight Hammer with our allies all around the world, but certainly also in the region, they say a couple of things. They share our sentiments about the degradation of Iran's nuclear program and the fact that we have degraded their program by 1 to 2 years. At least intel assessments inside the department assess that, and I think their intelligence shares that conclusion.
Anti-Muslim incidents recorded in France during the first half of 2025 have risen by 75% compared to the same period last year, particularly with a surge in physical assaults. French authorities confirmed 154 anti-Muslim acts in the first 5 months of the current year, compared to 83 in the same period in 2024. The same sources noted that attacks targeting individuals rose by 209%, reaching a total of 99 incidents, up from 32 in the same period last year. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up tonight's program. Thank you for your kind attention and have a good night.